Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. Basketball season's here. There's only one place I go for tickets, and that's Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. When I want to go to a basketball game, football game, concert, comedy show, just click on the event you want to attend. Game Time gives me a seat preview, offers me a great deal. I get the best bang for my buck. Game Time also has the lowest prices guaranteed, or they will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download their app, Game Time app, 90 seconds, create an account, use the code Colin, that's me, C-O-L-I-N, $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply, redeem codes Colin, C-O-L-I-N, $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, Danny Parkins, breakfast ball on FS1, lot to talk about. So, I said it today. I think, and I had a music producer text me today that I know off this comment I made. He'd like this comment. I think two things you see within 5 to 6 games of a new franchise quarterback: clear red flags and excellent traits. So I always use the example of The Voice or of American Has Talent or American Idol. I don't know much about music other than I enjoy it, but I can see within 3 to 4 notes, literally 12 seconds, hack and great. Figuring out lounge singer to successful lounge singer, good is hard. Justin Fields could be good, but good is very hard to decipher because the difference between good and great is consistency. You got very few bad games from Mahomes, whereas Russell Wilson now is at the point where, oh, that's pretty good. Oh, that's awful. Same with Justin Fields. So I think good is hard to decipher. I think awful and great are pretty easy. You can see a draft pick in the NBA. You're like, yeah, that's like James Wiseman. I'm watching with the Warriors, like second year. I'm like, he's never going to be a star in this league. It is Ant, first year, all-star break. You're like, yeah, that's going to work. Jason Tatum,
sure.
Jason Tatum, even rookie year, Jason Tatum. You're like, yeah, that's going to work. He's going to get better. So I look at Caleb and Jayden Daniels, and to a lesser degree, Bo Nix, and I'm like, yep, those are franchise guys. Whereas Justin Fields was 1 step forward, 2 back, Caleb just keeps getting better. Clearly takes the coach. Jayden Daniels, he's Lamar Jackson, but better in the pocket as a rookie. Bo Nix has a lower ceiling, less of an arm, reads the field, more mobile than anybody that didn't watch Oregon Duck games really realizes. He's actually really mobile.
Yep.
Barks right back at Sean Payton. Not a follower, total leader, confrontational. And I feel now, Bo has the less talent. He's in a division with Harbaugh and Andy Reid. Like, it's a tough draw. But my take is Caleb, Jalen, Jayden, Bo. These are franchise quarterbacks. I have no fear saying, yeah, this is what it looks like.
So I want to ask you 2 quick questions before I give you my full response to it. One, I guess this would be a small response. Do you think I don't think the NBA comparison is fair, because in the NBA, it is so purely a talent sport that talent can overcome situation. Like, John Morant goes to Memphis, doesn't matter, the franchise. Anthony Edwards goes to Minnesota, doesn't matter the franchise. Your talent will always win out in the NBA. You might not win big if you don't have a good organization, but you can be a 10-time All-Star on a bad franchise and make an impact in the NBA. In football, I do think situation, coaching, offensive line, talent around you, it is so situational that I find it much easier to make a snap judgment in basketball than I do in football. And then I guess the quick question I'd get back to you is, what did you say about RG3? Because his rookie year was historic.
So that's good.
Derailed by injury, sure, but I feel like we could have said a lot of the things we said about Jayden about RG3.
Okay, so I said during RG3's rookie year, I said Luck's the better quarterback. But RG3 is more fun to watch, and voters are suckers for artistry. NBA voters, Westbrook. He has bad handles and can't shoot.
Right.
Derrick Rose couldn't shoot, spindly, ended up getting hurt a lot. So I think RG3 pleased the eye, but I didn't think it was nearly as sustainable. I thought Andrew Luck was bigger, stronger. I mean, Jesus, the kid went to Stanford. He memorized a playbook, according to Kobe Fleener, who also went to Stanford, in 2 days. Like, it's like, yeah, it's so I never bought into
crazy, but I mean, but RG3 was rookie of the year.
Right.
He
I didn't
did
buy
not.
it.
You didn't buy it, and you buy
I
something with Jayden that you did not buy with RG3.
Oh, I think Jay, said with RG3, I think he's talented, but he was thin. I said Andrew Luck's the better player. So Jayden is better in the pocket than RG3. I think they're both equally twitchy, but here's was a real sell for me on Jayden Daniels. And this almost never happens. Almost as a rule, when you have a rookie quarterback, the coaching staff says, "Hey, be patient. This is a process."
Right.
Literally, Dan Quinn, a defensive coach, was like, "I've never seen anything like this." I mean, they literally in camp couldn't. Brian Kelly's like, the kid's magic. Brian Kelly runs through quarterbacks at Notre Dame. I think he had 6 at one point in like 5 years. So part of it was I watched a lot of his games. Second, the people I trusted, Cliff Kingsbury, Steve Keim, who hired him as a friend, he was like, "No, Colin, this kid, Cliff can't even, like, it's Kyler with more maturity, better in the pocket." And I like Kyler. So I've had good sourcing on Jayden, and I totally buy it.
Okay. So Jayden to me is incredibly impressive. I was not as sold. I certainly was not as sourced on him as you were. It was hard for me with how slender he was and how much talent was around him
Yeah.
to say for sure that it would translate. Like, I loved Drake Maye coming out of college. I had him
Yeah.
actually above Jayden. Some of the games I watched, I was like, this guy's doing more with less, tough as hell, crazy athlete, youngest brother, comes from a family of athletes, like overachieved his situation. And Jayden Daniels has blown me away. I think every piece of hype that he's gotten has been totally, totally valid. I do think there is an element of some of his production is based on running the football. And that works, obviously. Lamar Jackson's got a couple of MVPs, but it's not the type of thing that ages particularly well. Like, we haven't seen that quarterback in their 30s. Like, it's a depreciating asset. At some
Right.
point, you need to just be great from the pocket. And he's been great from the pocket. So I'm not saying he can't be that. But if his comp is Lamar Jackson and Caleb Williams' comp is Aaron Rodgers, if we did a redraft tomorrow, I would still take Caleb Williams over Jayden Daniels.
Yeah.
I think the skill set is actually more sustainable and allows for a higher
Well,
ceiling.
yeah. So I would too.
You would. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I
But
don't think that's a majority opinion anymore.
yeah, no, I think I use this word a lot. People think it's weird. Caleb's thicker and trunkier. He's a
Okay.
big, thick athlete. If you're
Yeah.
standing around him, you're like ass, legs, shoulders. He's just big. Jayden
Yeah.
is more spindly. That always worries me. But saying I would take Caleb over Jayden is like saying I would take vanilla ice cream over chocolate or whatever. Like, I like them both. And if
Yeah.
I don't care, I don't care.
And I listen, it's possible. People at the beginning, people wanted to make this because Caleb had a bad couple of games and Shane Waldron had an awful adjustment to Chicago. People were immediately running to. It's like people have the memory of one day, 1 minute. Like, it has to be CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. I'm like, are you guys crazy? It like that is so stupid. Like, it's very possible that this draft ends up being
By the way,
Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers.
how about this?
All 3 awesome quarterbacks, all 3 franchises and fan bases are thrilled with their guy.
Danny, you don't have to go back that far. Herbert, Burrow, Hurts, Tua.
Right.
That was just like 4 or 5 years ago. We had an incredible draft.
Yeah. And so I think that is certainly what is in play here, because Bo Nix and Jayden have far exceeded what my expectations were for them coming into the draft. And I'll be honest, it was one game. I thought Drake Maye was going to get killed last Sunday.
Yeah.
with 6 offensive line combinations in 6 games, no offensive weapons to speak of, defensive head coach. They were sitting him for a reason. Then it felt like going up against Houston's pass rush, which led, I mean, the Patriots led the league in pressures allowed, and the Texans led the league in pressure percentage generated. I was like, this is a terrible matchup. Why are they doing this? And he acquitted himself beautifully, I thought, in the game. One of the stories of the season to me is how these quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, are playing so well. But also, if you just look at completion percentage in the NFL right now, 15th in the NFL, 15th is Will Levis, who's completing 66% of his passes. It's not that long ago that was top 3 in the NFL or even something that would lead the league.
Yeah.
So I think what has happened, and this is a much better podcast topic than TV show topic, I think that analytics and the smart people in football have figured out that conservative passing is so valuable. Is it an extension of the run game? And young quarterbacks can do it. And young quarterbacks are cheap quarterbacks. And we know that's where the market inefficiency is. So it's never been easier to be successful as a young quarterback because the passing game is now more left and right than vertical. And in baseball and basketball, the analytics revolution has rewarded the high variance plays, go for a home run, shoot a 3-pointer. So analytics in those sports has actually injected like the more difficult skill set. Whereas analytics in football, don't take risks. Don't throw the ball down the field. Don't force it. Just matriculate. We'll go for it on 4th down. 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards is fine. And just get the ball out quick. Don't take hits. Execute the easy pass. And so you're seeing, I mean, Jayden Daniels is completing 75% of his passes. That is, he deserves credit, and he does have some big plays to him. So he's not just thinking and dunking. But that number makes no sense. 7 years ago, we would have been like, that's not going to happen. And so I think that coaches have gotten so much smarter at cultivating an offense where young guys can have a high floor early, that it makes it more difficult for me to evaluate their ceiling because I think the floor has been raised so significantly.
Sean Payton. Sean Payton is going back to his old stomping grounds on Thursday night. It's Denver facing the Saints. I don't know if the Big Easy going to show him a lot of love. I mean, when he retired, they thought he'd never coach again. Now he's on the Broncos sidelines going back home. The dome's going to be loud. So we know he's going to have to lock in and block out the noise. And he's my friend. So I thought, I know just the thing that's going to help him do that. So, yes, here we go. I ordered them on Amazon, as you can see right here. Sean needs help. I'm his friend. I'm his ally. Ordered these puppies. Looked at different options on Amazon. And I ordered him noise-canceling headphones. Didn't take very long for them to get here. Hopefully an item like this can help him focus. Bo Nix can be calm on the road. The rookie can win. Quick prediction, Broncos -3. Saints are all banged up. Chris Olave's out. Rashid Shaheed's out. Taysom Hill. I like the Broncos. Sean, you're welcome. Yeah, this is what I have said about the Cowboys and the Lakers. Very insular franchises with a lot of buses and friends of buses in the Lakers and a lot of Joneses and friends of Joneses inside the Cowboys. Is that as the league's gotten sharper, shrewder, and more analytical, the Lakers and the Cowboys have gotten more of the corner grocery store in a supermarket world. Is that football's gotten so smart, and you look at the Cowboys right now, and they're overpaying for a quarterback that's a B-plus quarterback. Like, that is the number one mistake in the league. Pay for Mahomes or a rookie quarterback. Those are the only two. You can have Garoppolo and Goff early in their career and get to a Super Bowl. You can have Garoppolo and get to a Super Bowl before you pay him big.
Well, if you get McVay, if you get Shanahan, if you get one of those guys, and obviously those guys don't count against your salary cap. So
that's right.
Do anything you can to hire one of those guys.
So people, it's remarkable to me that the Cowboys and the market struggles with this. I think Dallas fans have finally figured it out. The Athletic did a poll, and like 75% of Cowboy fans are like, we have no chance to win the Super Bowl for 5 years. So they get it. Cowboy fans get it. But these people that think it's an anti-Dak conversation, no, it's an anti-paying a B-plus quarterback A-plus money. It is so odd. It's like the most obvious analytic. Some we can argue about in baseball. Some are clear that the ground ball is a death penalty. A strikeout's not. That's pretty obvious if you don't follow too much analytics. In
Right.
football, just don't pay a good quarterback great money. If you don't know anything else, that's clear. And
You
the
know, it's funny though.
Cowboys are doing it.
It's funny. It's I get why teams do it. Even saying that, because in Dallas's situation, let's say they decided not to pay Dak and just let him leave for nothing. That's also bad team building. Like, he finished second in the league in MVP last year. He's won 12 games 3 years in a row. They led the league in scoring last year. I hate when teams just let stars walk for nothing. You have to
Yeah,
get something for your asset. Even if it's 60 cents on the dollar, you have to get
yeah,
something. And so Dallas was going to be too good to draft Drake Maye or to draft Bo Nix or to draft
right.
Jayden Daniels. And so then they would be more, maybe they wouldn't be paying big money to go get a good quarterback, but they would be trading multiple first round picks to move up and get a good quarterback. And do you trust that Jerry Jones is going to hire the right coach to develop the young quarterback? Because, yeah, if you could say, I'd rather have Jayden Daniels at his money than Dak Prescott at his, like, of course, obviously. But Atlanta was like, we can't have another year of Desmond Ridder. Like, we will give Kirk Cousins $180 million at 35 coming off of an Achilles and draft Michael Penix so that we never have to go through a season like that again. Like, there aren't 32 good quarterbacks in the world that can do this
Well,
job. And there's 32 teams.
yeah, I also think something I touched on last week is quarterbacks come in more ready to play, but owners are more ready to fire them. So you've got this convergence
Yeah,
of
definitely.
wealthier owners, more impulsive, quarterbacks more talented. We're not giving you 2 full years. I mean, the fact that Daniel Jones got an extension and was basically a C-minus quarterback, it just
Right.
that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, no, that was a terrible one. That one made no sense. And the thing about these rookies, like, I kept saying when I was still doing radio in Chicago, I was like, we need to hold Caleb Williams to a really high standard. And
Yeah.
people were like, why do you keep saying CJ Stroud? That's an outlier. I was like, no, it wasn't. The outlier for Stroud was that he didn't throw interceptions. He only had 5 interceptions. But Dak had 4. Like, we have, as a rookie, we have seen it before. The guy had 23 touchdowns. He had a little over 4,000 yards. It was a very, very, very impressive season because no one saw it coming. Houston was terrible. He turned him around. He won a playoff game. But I mean, he beat the Browns. He beat Joe Flacco in a playoff game.
Yeah.
Like, and again, this is not to knock CJ Stroud, but my point is, it is easy, easier to be good as a rookie because back in the day, you'd be playing in like the Big 12 in a spread offense, and they'd be like, come into the NFL and be under center and take 7-step drops and throw post routes. And now they're like, everything's out of the shotgun. You can have a wristband. We're going to call the play in on a number, and we're going to give you a run pass option, just like you had in college. So it's just so much easier to be good early that I hope that we get smarter when Shador Sanders or whomever comes
Right.
into the NFL next year. And then everyone's like, pump the brakes on expectations. No, man, like, build your organization from coaches, from investment in the offensive line, wide receivers. Build your organization to take advantage of the first 4 years of these guys when they're crazy cheap, because that's the easiest time it should ever be for you to win a Super Bowl if you have a great quarterback. And I do think that Washington and Chicago, at least I'll say it on those guys. You're farther ahead on Bo Nix than I am, but those teams should be making hyper aggressive moves the next 3 years to win a Super Bowl. because that's what you can do if you've got a quarterback who's that good, who's that cheap.
If you're ever injured, check out Morgan and Morgan. It's America's largest injury law firm, and they are there for you. Over 100 offices nationwide. Think about that. More than 1,000 lawyers with over 20 billion, that's a B, $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients. Things happen in life unexpectedly. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan and Morgan is really, really easy. Like winning in the NFL is hard. We know that quarterbacking in the NFL is hard. Submitting a claim is easy. You're ever injured? Check out Morgan and Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound law from your cell phone. Morgan and Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get a full and fair compensation if there's an unexpected accident in your life. And I've had a few. So there are certain things that the media does. They don't irritate me, but they're so predictable. One of them is early in the season when there are injuries, people are like, I don't think I've ever seen this many NFL injuries. Yes, you have. 12 months earlier.
Yeah.
And in the end, almost without exception, you get to a Super Bowl and each team is missing like one starter and teams are overwhelmingly healthy. Players get healthier. They hit less in practice. They hit less in games. Doctors are better. Fitness is better. They're fine. So here's the other one that just cracks me up. After a great weekend of college football, man, college football is so much better than the NFL. Oh, they're both great and they're different. The NFL is a higher level of coaching and playing. You get guaranteed like 5 to 7 great games a weekend, even though there's only 32 teams. In college football, you have 130 teams and you may get 4 great games and a great weekend. I mean, like last weekend was great and we all knew it was great. But you'll have weekends going into a college football weekend where like there's like one game between ranked teams. And you can get a nice Kansas State TCU game, but I went out with my wife. I'm not watching it. So here's how I look at the NFL and college. The NFL is a successful brother in the family. He always has a nice car. He's got a nice fund with his broker. A little boring at times and predictable, but you kind of know what you get. College football is the brother in the family that twice a year you have a big party, you invite him over, and he'll take all his clothes off, go naked, jump into a pool, kind of drunk. People laugh, but it's kind of inappropriate. You're not happy with him, but you do wake up the next morning and say, you know, he really gets the most out of life. You know, we have a nicer, our kids go to better schools. We have a nicer life, but you know, Tim, he really has a good time in life. And that's how I feel college football is. At its best, it's wild. Fans are pouring on the field. The officiating can be abjectly horrid. These are
the
21
kickers are soccer players who may or may not know what they're doing.
Special teams are a S show.
Yeah.
But like Tim, who got naked and jumped into a pool, there is something memorable and ecstatic about it. And I thought Oregon, Ohio State was that. It's like, Jesus. But my point being, if I circle back, is they're both great. They're much more unique. One's corporate, one's on a campus. And I think that's the beauty of them.
Well, it's funny, though. I mean, some of your finest work, Colin. One of your finest analogies. We got to work on Tim's name. I feel like Tim's name should be like Madison or like Bucky or Eugene, like a college
Bo.
player. Yeah, exactly. So we got to work on Tim's name, but otherwise 9.8 out of 10 on the Colin analogy scale. And I was just judging myself because I like the NFL so much more than college. And I'm like, am I the boring corporate suburban guy with like the healthy stock portfolio?
You kind of are.
Yeah, I know, dude. I'm washed up. Like I got a wife and 2 kids, and I just love like a sushi dinner and a bottle of red and a nice early bedtime. But yeah, it's true. College at its best it's just, you're like, this is crazy. I don't
Yeah.
understand what's happening here. This is random. A team that's a 30-point underdog can win a game. Like, like the NFL, it's like, oh, the biggest spread on the board is 6.5. Like, right? Like it's parity by design. There's a salary cap, there's a salary floor. Free agents are just as likely to choose Dallas as they are Buffalo and Green Bay because they just follow the money. Like I think the NFL is the perfect viewing product. I think it's perfect. Every game matters. Every team before the season doesn't think they can win a Super Bowl, but like worst to firsts happen every single year. Rookie quarterbacks can change a franchise on a dime. Like basically every franchise has some reason to believe, at least within 3 years, right? Like Jacksonville 3 years ago absolutely thought that it was on the board that they had a future Hall of Fame quarterback. So I think the NFL is a perfect viewing product, and college is just a little tougher for me to like follow and be fully invested
Right.
in and week out. But college at its best is just awesome. It's because it means like an irrational amount to the people in the building. Not that pro fans don't fight and pro fans aren't passionate. They obviously are, but it's just like the tribalism of like, this is the most important thing in the entire state of Alabama.
Right.
Like, I'm a fifth generation Badger. Like there's just something about like the college football pageantry that I'll never be able to quit. What did you think about what Dan Lanning did? Should that penalty, putting 12 men on the field intentionally at the end of the game, be more than 5 yards? That felt like
Probably.
it feels like a cheat code to me.
Yeah, a little bit. But my accountant's job is to find holes in the tax system, and we're
Yep.
going to find them every year. I make it very clear to my accountant, my entertainment attorney, we do not cheat, but our job is to assist me in paying the least amount of taxes I can in California. That's legal. And I think that's what an accountant's job is, to find holes and
Yeah,
crevices.
no, I'm
And
not mad at Dan Lanning.
no. So yes, I think I look at it like this. There are two rules. There's a certain rule that college has better than pro: pass interference. No penalty should be 64 yards. It's stupid if our feet are tangled. And
Yeah.
I mean, that would literally be like imprisonment for jaywalking. Your
Yep.
feet get tangled, it's a 64-yard penalty. It shouldn't be. So college has that better. Overtime, but conversely, neither side can figure out overtime, and both sports have made multiple changes. My theory has always been the road team gets the ball first because it's harder to play on the road. You get it first. First score wins. Nobody likes that. I wrote about it in my first book. So the way I look at this is it is a smart coach and a smart staff manipulating the rules. It's not up to Oregon to play nice. It's up to the NCAA to get their shit together.
I completely agree with you. I'm not mad at Dan Lanning. But when your accountant finds a loophole that then the government finds, oh my God, we're losing a bunch of money on this because there's a loophole, I expect them to close the loophole.
Yeah.
And so just like it should clearly be a pre-snap penalty. Like they should not let the time run off the clock. Like, hey, there's 12 guys out here, ball is snapped. Like blow the play dead. It's on the defense. So or put the time back on the clock, right? Like so instead of it going from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, it just, hey, we got to put this back. We know what you're doing. We got to put it back to 10 seconds. Like make the rule like less than 3 minutes left in a game or something. If you do 12 men on the field on defense, no time can come off the clock. Like it's a pretty easy fix, or make it a
Right.
20-yard, 15-yard penalty. It's an easy fix, but I was just like, God damn it.
By
Like
the way,
that's smart, but you should be penalized more because we did catch you.
but can we both agree the worst rule in sports is the NFL's you fumble into the end zone and the other team gets the ball?
Yes, I hate that. I hate that rule, but I do think there should be a compromise. It shouldn't be that the other team gets the ball. I like the reverse touchback. Okay, reverse
So,
touchback. It doesn't exist anywhere, so I understand why you would be confused. I'm running into the end zone. I'm diving for the pylon. I fumble. if the ball goes out of bounds, I don't think I should get the ball back just because the other team didn't recover back at the 1 yard line. I do think there should be some penalties for like added emphasis on ball security by the end zone. If you fumble and they don't recover and it goes out the end zone, you get the ball back. You don't lose possession, but you've got to go back to the 20-yard line.
Yes, totally agree. Totally agree.
I call it the reverse touchback. I don't know if there's a better way to call it that, but
Yep.
it was second. Yes. If it was second and goal from the 4, and you go out of bounds at the 1, and the ball goes out the end zone. Now it's third and goal from the 20. Like, you know what I mean? Like you should have a severe penalty for fumbling the ball by the end zone. But it should not be a change of possession unless the defense actually recovers the ball. Defense needs to recover the ball in order for the defense to get the ball.
That's right. I don't think you should get a possession without recovery.
I got another one for you. We're talking rules changes. I did this on the TV show, but they're like, you're talking kicking, you can do it in 1 minute. So I had to literally do this in 1 minute. So I'm bringing this to your podcast. I'm seeing too many field goal kickers this year. I had the data after 5 weeks. I'm going to assume that it's the same after 6. So just roll with me. After 5 weeks, we had seen more 50-yard field goal attempts than any time in league history. And I had our researcher chart it. It is a straight line going up. It's like NVIDIA stock. Like it is just a straight line going up. And it went from 76 50-yard plus field goal attempts through 5 weeks last year to 97 this year. So it is exponential growth. And my theory is you get 5 yards extra on these touchbacks because of the new kickoff rule. And kickers have gotten really damn good. Like Brandon Aubrey is ridiculous. He is amazing. But I don't want to watch kickoff, touchback, 2 or 3 first downs, field goal. I think that makes you less likely to go for it on 4th down. And field goal attempts are not interesting. They're interesting at the end of the game when something serious is like a game-winning field goal is a suspenseful play. A 44-yard field goal is not interesting because not only are field goal attempts up, the make percentage is up. 76% of field goals, 50 yards or more, are makes now. So to me, the kickers have gotten too good. It's too big of a part of the game. Narrow your uprights. Jason Kelsey said on his podcast too. I agree with it. Field goals, the uprights are 18 yards wide. In the Arena League, it was 9 yards wide. Let's narrow the goalposts to bring down these numbers. I don't want to see 6 field goal attempts a game. It's boring.
Okay. So people years ago, 30, 40 years ago, suggested because Kareem in the 70s, Wilt dunking was so easy, we should raise the rims to 11. And my take is there are changes in all sports, but not everything has to be hard. In golf, long putts are hard. Driving the fairway for a pro isn't really hard. That yes, PATs are easier and kicks are easier, but that's okay. Because when you miss one, it's shocking. So you do get the drama when they do miss 1 out of 4. Sports aren't just about making things difficult. Great for Michael Jordan in a zone, the mid-range 16-footer was just money. Even in the playoffs, he was like 60%. And that's okay. People pay to see athletes succeed, not fail. So I like my kick. I mean, these guys get death threats on college campuses. I like my kickers making most of their kicks. Because if kicking was harder and they missed more of their kicks, it'd be more bad quarterbacks going for it on 4th down, more good teams getting the ball in prime field position, and margins would grow.
Yeah, okay. I mean, reasonable counterpoint. I personally would rather watch a 4th down attempt than a field goal attempt. Like I'd rather see Dak Prescott.
Have you ever watched Zach Wilson play?
No, but we were just talking about how it's gotten easier to play quarterback. Like I'd rather watch Dak Prescott throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb than Brandon Aubrey kick a field goal. Your point on everything in sports doesn't have to be difficult and maximum difficulty is true, but I mean, I don't know, man. There is something to the US Open being the most fun golf tournament to watch.
Yeah.
Like watching the pros struggle. You go to an NBA game, like they're too good at shooting. I'm sorry. I love the NBA. I love it so much. Like I'm going to follow Lonzo Ball's preseason debut tonight for the Bulls to see how his knee holds up. Like I love the NBA, but they're too damn good at shooting. So like I'm interested in figuring out a way to make it so that the 6'10 power forward who gets 14 rebounds a game is also not a 38% three-point shooter. Like, because then the math says that he should shoot threes over go bang down by the rim. So I do look for ways to make it a little bit more difficult on some of these guys because they have gotten so good. They're so good at these games.
The it's interesting. I was watching. I think I've told you this before. Is when I built my show and my business, I've always built them on a basic premise. I'll talk about things that are urgent and stars. So you have to have one of those two things: college football, pro football, scarcity of games, urgency. NBA, stars. UFC, if a Conor McGregor fights, Tiger in his prime, stars. Only one Masters a year. I think it's always been the downside to baseball where they don't promote their stars and there's zero scarcity. But I will say, where I think the Dodgers are really smart is they basically just, I think it's really brilliant. And it doesn't get as much play. Now, a lot of their stars are hurt. I mean, even Ohtani can't pitch now. They have an entire pitching staff, a strong top 5 starting pitching staff on the shelf. The fact that they're in the NLCS with like 5 great pitchers unavailable is remarkable.
Yeah.
But basically what they did, they said in a changing landscape where baseball is hurting in attendance, we're going to buy an all-star team and we're going to push most of the big salaries down the road. And baseball's like, wait a minute, your payroll's 5th. You spent $1 billion in the offseason. Second was the San Francisco Giants at $330 million. And I do think there is something to be said. In sports, socialism works. Salary caps are socialism. Baseball, basically, just go spend $1 billion. And then you can make it work by pushing down the salaries. And so the idea is socialism works. But I would argue a Yankees-Dodgers World Series is validating my belief, which is biggest brands win. Baseball never wins if the Guardians are in the World Series or the Tampa Bay Rays or the Orioles. And so in the end, because of the slow pace of baseball in a frenetic, caffeinated world, that allowing the big markets to just have all-star teams. It's not socialism. It's total capitalism. It's not fair. It's not remotely even. And it's the only way for baseball to grow.
Yeah, listen.
Maybe gross.
It's gross. And it's gross. And our boss's boss, right? Like the top of they're thrilled. Like, get the Yankees in there and Dodgers or Mets, they'll be fine with either, right? It's much better business than Rangers D-backs. I do think that I don't agree that baseball doesn't market its stars. I think that people just don't care. Like like they market them, they have commercials, they have endorsement deals. It's just that if I watch the Cubs and I care about the Cubs, there is not enough time for me to watch the Dodgers. It's impossible. There's 162 games. Like, and I will always be more interested in Cubs Reds than Yankees Dodgers. Doesn't matter to me about Ohtani and Aaron Judge because I care about the Cubs. So baseball makes $100 with fives and singles. The NFL makes $100 with a $100 bill and with gold bricks. Like, it's just a different way. They're both good businesses. They're both growth businesses. So the players in baseball will never accept the salary cap. It's just like their bedrock principle. But I'm telling you, man, baseball's economic model we've talked about this with the regional sports networks. Like they make their money not from the national TV deals. Obviously, they make some. They make some,
Right.
but they make their money from two things, really: attendance, because there's so much inventory, and local media rights, because again, there's so much inventory. The marquee sports network that airs Cubs games, they get 150 Cubs games a year. That's a lot of television. That's a lot of commercials. That's a lot of advertisements to sell. So the RSN model is collapsing. Major League
Hurting the
Baseball,
small market teams much more.
correct. Well, correct. But like that is going to create a situation where players are going to come up for free agency. And it's like, okay, the Dodgers, they can afford them, but do they need them? Like, if they already have Freeman and Betts and Ohtani, like they're not going to just, there's going to be guys like this offseason, Aaron or Juan Soto will get paid, Corbin Burns will get paid. And I don't think there will be another 9-figure free agent this offseason. Like the have and have nots is going to grow so much, and so many teams are going to be making relatively nothing from their local TV deals. And then that also will hurt attendance because you're not going to be able to field an exciting competitive team. You'll be eliminated by May. By the time kids are out of school and you want to go to games, the team's going to be 15 games out of first. That you don't have to have socialism, but I'm not sure you can have completely unchecked capitalism either. Like it will make TV executives happy at the end to have the Yankees and the Dodgers in it. But the health of baseball is June, July, August, companion sport, barbecues, 4th of July, trying to pack stadiums for 81 home games a year in 30 different cities. Why would you go to a game in Pittsburgh in June if you have no shot? Or, I mean, Milwaukee does a nice job as an organization. Tampa's figured
well
out
run.
to do a nice job. But it's just, I don't know. I think that the economic model of baseball is at a real teetering point, that either the players are going to have to break and accept a salary floor and a salary cap, or there's going to need to be more drastic like revenue sharing. Like the Dodgers will not be able to keep all of their local TV rights because I think some of these teams are just never going to be able to compete again on the money side.
Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. So, last time we talked about your sort of indoctrination into New York and New York
Oh,
sports.
yeah.
So, and the city itself, I tend to prefer, I'm a London, Chicago guy more than a New York guy or a Boston guy. Nothing against them. I like the people of New York. I like the food and the people. I don't like the smell and the congestion, but whatever. I don't like Rome as much as people do. I don't like New York as much as people do. I love London and Chicago. I think it's easier to get around town. Is there something in New York for our audience that's surprisingly good? Something about New York that you said to yourself, wow, it's even better than the city I grew up that I love, Chicago.
It's tough for me to give better. Well, I will. I'll say this. Central Park is not overrated. Central Park is amazing. Like
Yes.
it is amazing how big it is
Yeah.
and how peaceful it is.
Yeah.
Because everything, like if you find green space in this
Right.
concrete jungle, you're
Yeah.
like moth to a flame. You're like, oh my God, green space. But a lot of the like little small parks, they're so busy and so it's like, can I like you stand up from your chair and like someone's like, oh, are you getting up? And like they're coming in to like immediately fill your chair. Like it's tough to find a quiet moment
Right.
outdoors in this city. But then you go to the most famous one, Central Park, and there could be thousands and thousands of people, and there's rickshaws and people drawing caricatures of people and, hustle and bustle and Nathan's hot dog stands and like there's commerce and everything. You can find a patch of green, sit down and have a cocktail or listen to a podcast and fall asleep in the grass
Yep.
and not be bothered. Like it is an amazing, Chicago has a beautiful lakefront and Millennium Park is great, but it's not as like private. Like it's in like you can go into places in Central Park and not see buildings.
Yeah.
That's insane. So you just like because then as soon as you step a second outside of it, you're like, oh right, I'm in New York. So I think that everyone knows about it. So like, oh, Central Park is great. Like, sweet, Danny, thanks for the breaking news. It really is great. And then I just want to shout this out. Your podcast, we talked about stand-up comedy last time, and two different comedians reached out to me on Instagram after hearing about it. And one of them was Jared Freed, who's an awesome comedian, New York regular. And I was going back and forth on Instagram. And he was like, yeah, if you want to ever come to the cellar, let me know. And I went to the cellar last night, just table for one at the Comedy Cellar, and asked the producer on the show for a recommendation for a spot by there. She gave our social media, Lady Gianna, gave me a great spot, had steak frites, went to the cellar by myself. $14 cover, no big, like cheap entertainment. Louis C.K. dropped in. The guy sells out arenas. Like he just place goes. So there's a Tuesday. You know what I mean? It was just there's something to anything can happen here at any time.
Yep.
That is such a cliche about New
Yep.
York, but it's just true, man. It's
Yep.
just true.
Well, I can remember it very well. A buddy of mine, I was at ESPN, a buddy of mine, Brian from Portland, was in New York. And he said, hey, you want to go to a comedy club tonight? And I went to, I think it was Caroline's. I think it was Caroline's. And so I said, yeah, I'll meet you at Caroline's. And we went and I think we had a steak dinner. Could have been Del Frisco, if I recall. I went to Caroline's. And one of my favorite, I've been saying this for 20 years, one of my favorite people in the world is Colin Quinn. I think he's so funny.
He's incredible. I saw him do an hour at the cellar 3 weeks ago. It was amazing.
And he was working on an act.
Yeah.
And in fact, his cousin, who wasn't nearly as funny, opened.
Oh, cool. That's funny.
And then Colin went an hour, and he was wearing like sweatpants
Of course.
and a pizza stained shirt.
Yeah.
And he went up there, and I remember telling my buddy, and this was like 20 years ago. I'm like, that's the funniest guy in the country that hasn't become, now he's become a megastar now doing stuff on Broadway. But at the time he was doing shows, and we walked out of there and I'm like, like usually a guy gets funny really quick, like John Mulaney. And within a year and a half, you're like, wow, star. And I remember thinking, Colin Quinn is literally brilliant and funny and so likable and relatable. And it just pleases me that he's had all of his success. I mean, his Twitter account, he's literally said on Twitter, if you watch it, it's all sarcasm. He literally plays a character. Hey, gang, have you heard about the Super Bowl today? I'm having a private party. Like his whole persona on Twitter, I think is outrageously funny. And so that's just a classic New York story. I just walk into Caroline's with a buddy and we sat there for an hour and our stomachs hurt.
It was amazing because I was sat at a table for five and I'm a solo and I love going and doing things by myself. So I have no problem, but it's for, people in their 50s who have never been to the Comedy Cellar before, but they were like pretty decent comedy fans. Like they were like throwing out names that it wasn't just Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. Like they knew who Sam Morril was. They knew who Dave Attell were. Like they at least had like some knowledge of comedy. And I was telling them about the Cellar and I was like, listen, you're not going to know every name here, but like I had looked at the lineup ahead of time. I'm like, Greer Barnes. No one knows who Greer Barnes is. I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, but he's not like a huge touring comic.
Right.
He's a killer. He's so funny. He is just like a New York pro and he murders the room. Like everyone who gets up at the Cellar that's a paid regular, they're like they are absolute killers. They kill in New York. They can tour. Maybe they're an opening act, maybe they're a middle act, but like they absolutely can make money on the road. They'll work on like the Tonight Show or
Yep.
Seth Meyers or Colbert. Like it's just such a cool scene that that's a thing you can't get in Chicago because all of those comedians come to Chicago, but they come on their tour. So I can't see Louis C.K. drop in on a
Right.
Tuesday in Chicago. It's just not something that can happen. Two places. LA, New York. Only two places where that can happen in that scene. And so I mean, Stevie Wonder did like a pop-up show at Madison Square Garden last week. It was like an unannounced show at Madison Square Garden. I didn't go. I didn't know about it. I'm not cool enough to know about it. But I was like, wait, what? Like an unadvertised show from Stevie Wonder at the Garden? Like, and it doesn't even, how did she sell tickets? Who knew about it? I'm still trying to figure out my way into the New York scene, but it's a pretty amazing place. I'll never say it's better than Chicago because cost of living, my home, my people,
Yeah.
Midwest, like I'll never be able to get over that bias, but it's a pretty amazing place. It really is.
Yeah. It's, the late Larry King used to have a line about how New Yorkers are smart, they're savvy. He used to have a line, but he said a homeless guy in New York could own a grocery chain in Iowa.
I mean, that's also the thing about New Yorkers, where there's this arrogance of like, I went to Yankees Royals, the division series with Nick and his
Yeah.
family. There was a shocking number of people who were wearing jackets that on the back, there was like a Yankees emblem on the chest, and the slogan on the back was like New York or nowhere. Like there really are like 1 out of 15 people like were wearing this jacket that is like it's so smug. Like they absolutely believe that if you're like, no, Chicago's about as good as New York, like when you factor everything, they're like, no, that's ridiculous. They absolutely think like Paris, London, Chicago, Florence, kind of Florence. Get the hell out of here with your Florence, Italy. There's like a smugness to the New York superiority that I actually respect because they're
Yeah.
just so convinced that there's nowhere else in the world that even comes close to comparing to
Yeah. I
it.
mean, listen, I know some New Yorkers who have never been west of the Hudson, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
That's all.
And you would say like maybe you should check it out. The Grand Canyon's beautiful, and they're like, "And we got holes in our concrete here. What do I need to see that hole for?" Like it's just crazy, but I do respect it. Like they're like, oh, the subway, yeah, it smells like urine and there's rats and you'll see a naked person on it every 3 trips, but how else would you prefer to get around? I'm like, I don't know, any other way. but but it's New York.
Two things that you're engaged in, but we haven't talked a lot about, but you're big into gambling and you like politics. So I got into this discussion the other day. I thought this was fascinating. Um, I'm not going to predict who's going to win the election. But I found this fascinating. So there's something called the poly market, which is a gambling market for the election, and it leans heavy right. So tell me if I'm right on this. I said to a person yesterday, I said, I'd be very careful about reading too much into this market. And I want you to analyze it if you're my broker. I said, first of all, 72% of bets in America are placed by men. Men bet more than women. Big bets is close to 85%. We've all known a guy who's made a $10,000 bet. I've never once had my wife say, my friend Beth just placed $25,000 on the Rangers to beat the Caps tonight. So men are bettors, men are big bettors. So the market is influenced by that demographic. We know there's a referendum in this election that we've never seen before in my lifetime. It's men versus women. I mean, that's literally what the election is to a large degree. So I told somebody that market is going to favor the male candidate. Do not trust the Marist poll. Whatever the polls are, there's a handful. So that was my take, is that markets, when it becomes a man versus woman bet, a market will overwhelmingly favor a man because men bet more than women and bet large amounts on women. Now, as somebody that knows much more about betting than I do, does that make any sense?
Well, I think think it makes some sense, but markets are supposed to be impartial. Like the old adage of like Vegas wants to get 50% of action on each side of a game and just clear the vig is not really true. Like Vegas is happy to take a position on a game
Yes.
and be fine with 80% of the money being on one side if they have conviction that the public is wrong. Like there's this notion that like Vegas sets the line. It's not true. Sharp gamblers set the line. Vegas will open at a number, but they'll open at a number at maybe a lower limit and then see where the bigger gamblers, the good gamblers come in and place their money. And then that's where the line gets so sharp. So like betting into an NFL Sunday on Sunday morning, you're betting into the sharpest market possible. Like I try to
Yeah.
place NFL bets Sunday night for the next week.
I'll
Go
give you
ahead.
an example. Monday in the herd, I said, I am taking the Rams -5. It'll move to 7. Before the
Yes,
Devontae Adams trade, I said, offensive coach, off a bye, superior quarterback. I said, the wise guys, they're all betting the Rams here. Now the market's at 6.5. So that's an example of, I've always said the Blazing Five, the biggest weakness. I don't get to do it on Monday.
correct. Correct. My friends and on the picks on Parkins picks that I'm making on Friday on the show. By the way, 12-7-1 so far. Feeling very
Yeah.
good. Feel like I'm
Yeah.
seeing the board very clearly. But they're like, you're not doing totals and you're firing into Friday markets. They're
Right.
putting you in a very, very tough spot
Right.
to have a winning season. But I say all of that to say, like, the markets are supposed to be impartial, and you can look at offshore markets of the presidential election. And I've talked to enough people that know this. Like, if we were allowed to bet legally on the presidential election, it would be a bigger gambling event than the Super Bowl. It would be the biggest gambling event that we could possibly have. So I do think that generally speaking, the gambling markets for this stuff are pretty good. I'll be honest, biggest gambling loss of my life is the 2016 election. I just didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. And I kept firing on Hillary Clinton night of the election. And my buddy, like, he like texted me. He's like, dude, you've got to stop. Like, the markets have spoken. I don't care what they're saying on CNN. He's like, I don't care what the polls are saying. I don't care what your rooting interest is here. He's like the markets have spoken. And it was a great lesson that the markets were ahead of what was being talked about on TV. And obviously that was an event that basically none of the polls and none of the pundits saw coming. So I think your theory holds some water because the market in America is not as sharp as it should be with this because you can't take it legally. But this, you can get 5 figures, 6 figures down on the election offshore, no problem. I know people that have. So I don't believe that it's like terribly influenced by a bias of the gambling pool because there is plenty of
Yeah.
money down on it. I think this is a coin flip election right
Yeah.
now.
Same.
You know,
Same.
and the polls pretty much reflect that, but the
Yep.
gambling markets absolutely reflect. For the last few months, I haven't seen it be more than like plus 120 really in either direction since it settled when Kamala
Yeah.
entered the race. So this is a coin flip election.
Danny Parkins, as always, buddy. Great stuff. Loved it.
Anytime, buddy. Let's do it.
This week's college football preview brought to you by our friends at Cosm, the world's greatest fan experience. Been there several times, there last week for the 3rd time. If you're in LA or Dallas, you want an immersive experience, go check out Georgia, Texas this weekend at Cosm in their immersive dome Saturday. Every game, meanwhile, is in the hall. The dome is awesome. There are no multi-viewing experiences like the hall in any market you've been to. So this Saturday, Alabama, Tennessee renew one of college football's most storied rivalries. Number 5, Georgia travels to DKR Stadium to take on number 1, Texas. So take SEC football to a new level. 2 college football powerhouses face off in share reality at Cosm. Get your tickets today at Cosm.com. All right, so Georgia, number 5, at number 1, Texas. Longhorns, a 5-point favorite. So Georgia is not the same Georgia team of previous years. They haven't covered the spread in their last 5 games, and they're allowing 28 points a game over their last 3. Carson Beck does not have Brock Bauer. It is not the same offense. The offensive line's dinged up. He is pressured more often and more interception prone than previous years. So Texas can play Arch Manning or quarterback Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers returned last week. Listen, they're scoring 43 points a game. The offensive line for the Horns is the best in college football. They lead the country as well in total defense, scoring defense by a wide margin. The reality with Texas, they look like Georgia looked about 2 to 3 years ago. I like the Horns to win and cover.